I'm Justin Perkins from Mystery Room Mastering. One of these years I'm going to make a nice studio video tour, but for now, here's the 1 to 2 minute low-budget iPhone video tour. So all the songs start out in Reaper, where I can apply different plugins to each song before the audio goes out to the analog equipment. And to get to the analog equipment, we have the Crane Song Head Quantum, which is a digital to analog converter. And in addition to that, there's the Perkins Sound VC2, which is also a digital to analog converter. And what I have on here, the Dangerous Master console, I have a button that will allow me to determine which of the two converters is feeding the analog equipment. So by pressing this button, either the Crane Song Head or the VC2 is feeding the analog gear. And additionally, the Dangerous Liaison allows me to determine which pieces of analog gear are inserted in the chain just by pressing these buttons. It's basically a patch bay, but without all the cables and the wiring and the soldering and the bad cables and all the maintenance. So it's a great unit. Here we have the Mazalek MEA2 Precision Equalizer, and it's a solid state unit. It's just a very musical sounding, clean EQ. You pretty much can't beat it. Above that is the Hendy Amps Michelangelo, which is a tube EQ, so it has a lot of character and color to it. It's not right for every song, for every project, but one thing it has here is the airband, which I really like, just to add a little bit of sparkle and sizzle to some dull tracks if they need it. Above that is the Moog EQ4M, which also has an airband, but this is a solid state unit, so it's a little cleaner and a little more neutral sounding. Again, it's not right for every project, but I do like to have it in the desk. It also has this sub band, which can be useful for tracks that have too much low end or not enough low end. We can really dial in the really low frequencies. Above that is the Dangerous Bax EQ, which this does get used on basically every project because it has some really nice high and low frequency cuts and shelves just for some general tone shaping. It's a really transparent EQ. In fact, it's hard to tell that it's in the chain unless you're doing some really extreme settings, but it's a really useful EQ. Above that, we're getting into the compressors. It's the Dangerous Compressor, and it's a solid state unit as well. It's basically like a Swiss Army knife, in my opinion, of compressors. It can do a wide range of sounds, and it's just a really flexible unit, so I'm happy to have that. But if that's not quite right for a project, I have the Manley Verimute, which is a tube compressor. It does have a bit of character and sound to it. It's got a bit of a warm, silky high end to it, and it has tubes in it, so it's just going to have a different sound. So usually one of those two is right for the job. And I also have this API 2500 compressor, which can be a little bit aggressive sounding at times, but it is a pretty nice sounding unit. So what I like to do here is on the Liaison, I can put it in parallel mode, which is why that light is flashing. And using this dial here, I could just blend in how much of the API 2500 we want to hear. So usually somewhere around here sounds great. So we're not hearing 100% of the signal, we're just blending it in. And that's where it can really be useful. Also in the analog realm is this Vertigo Sound VC2, which does harmonic distortion and saturation. It has two different bands, and what I really like about that is you can really fine-tune the sound of the distortion and then mix it into taste, which is usually pretty subtle in a mastering context, but just a very flexible and versatile unit. And there's also a plug-in version of this that also sounds really good, so I recommend checking that out. So to get back to the digital realm, we again have the Crane Song Head Quantum, which is also an analog to digital converter with a few harmonic options of its own. And also, still have the Perkins Sound VC2, which is also an analog to digital converter. So what I can do in Reaper is I can use a key command to toggle which one of these I'm hearing. I can listen to either the Crane Song Head or the VC2, and they're both great sounding units, but as I mentioned before, certain material sounds better with certain equipment, and what I can do is just toggle between the two and determine which one sounds better for this particular song. And sometimes it's very subtle, but it's worth having this option of having two different analog to digital converters. So while I'm working, I have a variety of meters to use, including this Duro loudness meter, which is a good way to just see the average loudness of whatever it is I'm working on. I also have this TC Clarity M for some more modern and advanced metering, such as LUFS, True Peaks, and this loudness radar. Down there on the iMac screen is Flux Pure Analyzer, which is a really great software metering tool that I basically have open 24/7. All this is monitored through the Cranesong Avocet 2A, which is a monitor controller. And if I'm listening on headphones, we have the Little Labs monitor headphone amp, which feeds these Audi's LCDX headphones, which sound incredible. Good for quality control, checking for noises and things like that. The Cranesong Avocet has a digital analog converter in it, so that's what we're hearing to listen to all these adjustments we're making. And on the remote, I can toggle between the mastered version, the unmastered version for comparisons, and I can also listen to something in iTunes or Spotify if I'm trying to reference a certain song to get a certain sound. And I only have one set of speakers, but this will let me switch between headphones and speakers, which is great, and of course adjust the listening level. And speaking of speakers, I use the PSI A215M mastering towers, and both of them are augmented with the A125M subwoofer, just to give me a little extra headroom and a little bit of low frequency extension way down below 30 hertz. So you can see there's two subwoofers in here. On the corner we have GIK corner traps, bass traps, and some additional treatments on the wall, some GIK alpha panels. There's an alpha corner bass trap, which looks nice. Some additional 6-inch GIK panels on the back wall. And down here there's a really interesting thing. It's also made by PSI Audio. It's the AVAA active bass trap, and what that means is there's a microphone inside that listens to what's going on, and I'm not going to even try to explain how it works. You should just go to the PSI website, but there's basically a microphone inside there, and it's helping correct any low frequency problems in the room, so I can hear things as accurately as possible. Once the audio is captured back to digital in Reaper, I can do some cleanup work in Isotope RX, which is basically like Photoshop for audio. I can remove clicks, pops, ticks, thumps, buzzes, crackles, mouth clicks, tape hiss, guitar amp buzz, things like that. I can basically just clean all that up using Isotope RX. And then once that's all done, I bring everything over to Wavelab to put the songs in order and put in the track markers, the metadata, CD text. Basically all the non-creative stuff gets done in Wavelab. And then I can render the final files for you to listen to and approve.